Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Country rock band Pure Prairie League harmonizes into the Birchmere in Virginia tomorrow night. I spoke with longtime member Michael Reilly about hits like Amie and the addition of Vince Gill. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP.
My pleasure, Jason. Thanks for having me.
What can we expect from the show? Like, is this one of your guys' first tours since this whole COVID mess? Like, are you just now getting back out on the road?
We started back out around the 23rd of June, so this is about our 8th or 9th show. As a matter of fact, I'm just getting ready to go to the airport. We're playing in Nashville tomorrow at the Charlie Daniels Volunteer Jam, and then heading down to the Birchmere.
Wow, rest in peace, Charlie Daniels. You guys going to be doing, any Devil Went Down to Georgia or anything, tributes down in Nashville?
To tell you the truth, not to spoil a surprise, but you're in D.C., so it won't be. We do a song called Pickin' to Beat the Devil, and we've turned it into Pickin' to Beat the Devil Went Down to Georgia. So we're going to do the whole middle section of Charlie's song in our song, just as a tribute.
Wow, that's going to be a really cool mashup there. That's going to be really cool. Well, that's the show you're going to be doing down in Nashville for the tribute. But what about D.C.? I assume we'll hear all the hits from over the years and any new stuff you guys have done, or what's sort of the set list like?
Yeah, well, it's we'll be playing all the hits and misses, and as well as we've brought back a few tunes from the really early days that we've never really done before. Songs like Call Me, Tell Me from Bustin' Out, and Angel Number 9 from Bustin' Out, and some other tunes like that. So, and they're a gas. They're so much fun to play. And then we've got a couple of new tunes in the set that we're getting ready to record as well. So it should be a good show. Yeah,
sounds like it. How did the band actually come together? Like, weren't they an existing entity right before you joined?
Yes, they were. As a matter of fact, the first time I saw Pure Prairie League was in 1970, and they opened up a show for a band I was playing with called the Lemon Pipers. And that was in Cincinnati, and they had just basically pretty much formed, and it was one of their first paying gigs. And I listened to them, and I went, wow, I really like this kind of stuff. And, 2 years later, I was in the band.
Didn't they get the name from, Pure Prairie League? Wasn't it like a temperance union in old Errol Flynn Western?
Yeah, it was a movie called Dodge City, made in 1939. And the drummer at the time, Tom McGrail, the guy that wrote Pickin' to Beat the Devil, by the way, was watching late night TV. And when he saw that, he said, boy, this would be a good name for the band.
As a movie buff, that was the year after Errol Flynn did Adventures of Robin Hood, and it was directed by Michael Curtiz, who would later make Casablanca. So what a couple fun facts there.
We thought it would just fit because the Omars didn't really, wasn't really a roll off the tongue type of a ear catcher.
So when you joined in 72, do you immediately take over? I know you're the bassist, but when do you become sort of the de facto frontman? Well,
de facto is the correct term, actually, Jason. When I joined, they had just finished the Bustin' Out album, and I was actually rehearsing for another tour at the time when they called and asked me to join the band. So, Craig Fuller was the lead singer and the frontman for the band and stuff like that, and the leader, I guess you would call it. But when he left in 73 because of draft problems, I basically stepped up and, I think it was by default and kind of, grabbed the reins and kept trying.
You said he left because of what problems?
Craig left in 73 because of draft problems. He had filed as a conscientious objector, and the judge in New York didn't want to hear it, so he threw him in prison.
Draft problems, the Vietnam War. I gotcha.
Yep. Exactly.
It was just winding down. A couple years later, the war would have been over, and you might never join the band. It's funny how timing really is everything, isn't it?
It sure is. It's just one of those things. But we felt really bad for Craig. We go out to Springfield, Missouri to visit him, bring him a chessboard and his guitar and stuff like that. So
Right, right. So Craig had founded the band, I guess, in Ohio, for that
Yes.
self-titled debut in '72. But then you hook on with the band for that next album, like you said, also in '72. So sort of bang bang back to back, and that one is called Bustin' Out, and fittingly titled because you guys that's when the band really did bust out. Definitely off of the strength of that hit, Amie, man. I mean, everybody. I mean, that's an all-timer song. That's probably the song that you guys are going to be always remembered for sure. But remind me about the recording of that song. I mean, did you guys have a sense that it was going to be a hit for you?
No, not at all. And Falling In and Out of Love was an unfinished song that we couldn't seem to finish up, and so we, it was our producer's idea just to combine them and turn it into, kind of one whole entity and a reprise. So it was interesting.
Well, weren't they like back-to-back tracks? Like, wasn't Falling Out of Love like track 5 and then Amie was right after? But Amie features the line Falling In and Out of Love.
Right. Well, that was, once again, a little fun in the studio, but they certainly weren't written together. And actually, Amie was written as a harder, more rockin' song.
Really?
But when we got studio, we turned it into an acoustic guitar song.
What's the key to doing those harmonies? That song might have some of the most beautiful harmonies of any song I think I've ever heard.
Well, when guys get together and sing, and that's where magic happens. And it's you just can't beat brothers that sing together. Like the Everly Brothers, and that's a certain sound that comes from them being brothers. And we were just lucky enough to hit on a harmony sound, and and it just kind of worked and gelled for us. And Mick Ronson helped out on Amie. He was singing the high part, the falsetto part on it.
Wow, and you mentioned Mick Ronson and stuff. One of the Rolling Stones' greatest guitarists of all times list.
Sure.
But
sure.
All right, cool. So Amie obviously was your first big breakout hit there. That thing was massive. But then the later album, 2-Lane Highway, that title song was also charted. Talk about the recording of that one.
Well, 2-Lane Highway, was our first album with the newer lineup. We hired Larry Goshorn to replace Craig Fuller in '73, and then by '75, we had been dropped by RCA Records after Craig left. They thought the band would break up. So we actually, pressed on and started doing a lot of college dates. Our booking agency was the biggest college booker in the country. So we started doing about 250, 275 college shows a year. And, when you do that many shows and cram Amie down those college kids' throats for, several years, it sort of became a classic.
Right, for sure. And then I know the next year for the album If the Shoe Fits, you guys did a pretty memorable cover of Buddy Holly's That'll Be the Day, which I actually believe might have started as a John Wayne quote in The Searchers. We got a lot of movie tie-ins, the Western this morning. That'll be the day. Great movie. Yeah. But anyway, remind us, what's the key to doing a good cover like that?
Well, John Boylan, who was producing us at the time on that record, actually made the suggestion, but little did we know, and here's where timing comes in. He was also involved with Linda Ronstadt recording that song, and she came out with the single right when we came out with ours, and so ours, of course, got the, got the cold shoulder.
Oh yeah,
but we loved doing the song. It was great, and it was great fun to record. But and I thought we did a pretty decent muscular version of it, but Ronstadt's Ronstadt, so.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with her, but at least you have that one for your catalog that you can bust that out at concerts.
Exactly.
Cool. And then, so that was like in '76, and then I guess like 2 years later in '78, you added a member of the band that would go on to be a huge solo country artist himself, Vince Gill. Talk about when he joined the band. How did that happen, and what did he bring to help elevate your sound?
Well, in '76, Vince was in a band called Mountain Smoke. It was a bluegrass band, and they opened up for us in Vince's hometown in Oklahoma City. And we heard them play, and Vince was just killed us. So we asked him to come up and sit in on a couple of songs. He played on Pickin' and Amie and a few other tunes. And I asked him right after the show. I said, "You want to join a rock and roll band?" he said, "No, man, I'm a grasser. I'm a bluegrass player." So I said, "Well, if you're ever interested in playing some rock and roll, come find me." So 2 years later, in '78, we were auditioning guitar players and singers because the Goshorn brothers had just left the band, and was right after the live album. And so we were auditioning people in LA, and this guy shows up, and he played a few tunes, but it just wasn't really happening. But he was a friend of Vince's, and Vince came along with him because he remembers, playing with us that night in Oklahoma City a couple of years prior. And so I said, "All right, the auditions for the day are over." I said, "Vince, you want to just stick around for a little while and maybe jam?" He says, "Well, I've got my guitar in the car." And we wound up playing for 4 hours. And then I said, again, "Now do you want to play some rock and roll?" He says, "Yes, I do. I'm in." So that's how it started.
Wow, that's wild. What was it like, not to mess with the chronology here, because I do want to get back to, your 80s albums, but really quick, while you're on the subject of Vince, what was it like watching him spread his wings and become such a huge country artist? I mean, did you always suspect deep down that, wow, this guy's voice is heavenly, and he's bound to break off on his own at some point?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that talent like that is a God-given gift, and it's just unmistakable. And we weren't thinking while he was in the band that oh yeah, one day he's gonna want to bolt. But the Pure Prairie League has always been a springboard for a lot of musicians, and we've been pretty lucky to get the good ones. And so it was just great watching Vince's genesis, and then starting out as a songwriter, and he was a brilliant player. So, I mean, we just had a gas having him in the band and playing shows and doing records. And he's always, when Vince is interviewed these days, he's always very gracious about, mentioning his days in Pure Prairie League and basically crediting us for giving him his start in the rock and roll and real professional music business.
I mean, you guys absolutely did. One final thing on Vince before we bring it back around. Do you have a favorite Vince Gill song?
There are several, but he wrote a song called "A Lifetime of Nighttime," which we still do in the set now, about a blind kid that he was talking to after a show one night. And then there's an instrumental song that he did for his mother called "Jareen," and I always love that. So, but Vince was spreading his wings as a songwriter, and obviously he's done pretty well with it.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's almost too many to even name. I mean, "Go Rest on That Mountain" will bring you to tears. Then he can do an upbeat one like, "Give Me One More Last Chance." He's pretty incredible. All right, cool. Well,
Yeah.
Going back to rewinding a little bit to back after he joined you guys there initially. So in the 80s, your album "Firing Up" had a couple hits. You got "I Can't Stop the Feeling," "I'm Almost Ready," but tell me about, I guess the biggest one probably was "Let Me Love You Tonight." Talk about, why do you think that one works so well?
It once again, I think it just fit the times. The big disco scare finally ended, and
the fever broke.
Yeah, in the late '70s. That's very good, Jason. And we had signed with Casablanca Records after RCA finally let us go. David Sanborn's saxophone track didn't hurt anything, and it was a really good pop song written by our rhythm guitar player, Jeff Wilson. And, it was just one of those things that it worked, and we got lucky.
Well, no, are you kidding me? We got lucky because we the fans, we were the lucky ones. Cool. And then I know you followed up with "Something in the Night." Was the next album the next year, and you had a couple hits on that. "You're Mine Tonight," and I guess the biggest one was probably "Still Right Here in My Heart." Any memories of how you guys came up with that one?
Well, once again, that was a Jeff Wilson song, and boy, he was a heck of a songwriter. And that was also a top 10 song. So "Let Me Love You Tonight" went to number 4 on the pop charts, and then number 1 on the adult contemporary charts, and then "Still Right Here in My Heart" went to number 7. So we were pretty lucky to have a couple of top 10 hits in a 2-year span.
Right, for sure.
Well, I mean, we could be here probably all day if we keep talking about all your albums. I do appreciate you joining us, and I guess just sort of in closing, how does the lineup sort of look today? I know, I think Fuller like reprised the band like sometime in like the 90s or something, but where does the state of the band stand today in terms of the lineup? You know, who do you got? Who will be on stage with you there at the Birchmere?
Well, the lead guitar player singer is Donnie Lee Clark. He's been with us 15 plus years. Scott Thompson, the drummer, has been with us 10 plus years. John David Call, of course, the founding member and original steel guitar player. He's been back with us for 10, 12 years. And we added a keyboard player 3 years ago named Randy Harper, who's just a great addition to the band, a monster keyboard player and good singer and just a great guy. So, the 5-piece lineup is really working for us, and the band's hitting on all 8 cylinders, and we're having a great time, especially after being off for 16 months.
For sure. Well, it'll be good to see you back out making live music, live in person again. Again, everybody, it's Pure Prairie League at the Birchmere on August 19th. So get your tickets now on Birchmere.com. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate sort of the walk down memory lane here with Pure Prairie League.
Well, it's a pleasure to do it, and it's nice that people want to have the real information. And since I was there for the whole damn thing, I kind of remember pretty much of it.
When you say real information, you worry? Are you saying that there's like other apocryphal stories or other things going around about the band that you want to clarify half the time?
Look at Wikipedia and AllMusic and there's a bunch of different sites that tend to write their own quote unquote biographies of us, and I see so many stuff. I got tired of trying to contact people and say, hey, by the way, this is actually the way it was, and I don't know where you got your information, but
hopefully this interview straightens some of that stuff out. What would you say, before we run, what would you say is like the biggest misconception that you hope that other interviewers, make sure they get it right?
Well, a lot of people still think that Vince is in the band, or Craig. So,
I just fired up Wikipedia. Yeah, your name is mentioned, is like buried, man. Like, come on, you took over in 72 and you were there for the whole run.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's Wikipedia, and I don't know where they get their information, but it's it kind of amuses me.
Well, you and I think the hardcore fans, they know the true story. Well, especially they will after listening to this. So we appreciate you getting the facts out there, sir. It was a treat to chat with you.
My pleasure, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.